everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Vinyl Tales, where we spin tales about vinyl. Today's song is a well-known novelty song that always seems to appear around October and Halloween time. The idea for the song came about when the writer simply happened to be playing around with the equipment in a recording studio that he was working in, where he ran across a cool little trick with some of the devices. It took him 9 months to finish writing the song because he had mixed feelings about the lyrics that he was writing. But when he went to record it later, he had to come up with some pretty unconventional methods in order to get the sound that he wanted. After it was released, it both went to the top of the charts, making it to number 3 and number 1 on separate charts, and it also got banned almost at the same time in different countries. The UK banned it right away, and the US went back and forth. But regardless of that, it still got played enough that it got not just one, but 2 response songs and a sequel. Be sure to watch all the way to the end of today's episode to learn about this song, which had a clearing out effect, as well as another piece of information about this song that you would never expect. On today's episode of Vinyl Tales. Hello everyone. Just a reminder, if you missed last week's episode, I have an announcement for you. Now, the amount of effort that it takes to make these videos and to keep the channel going versus the amount of interaction that I get from you guys, the viewers, from my point of view, it just isn't quite balancing out. So, due to the lack of interest that has been shown for both this show and the stories that I present to you, I am actually thinking about ending this show. Now, if you have any thoughts about this and would like to see it continue, then please let me know in the comments what you're thinking. But for now, I hope you enjoy today's fun little episode. For this week's episode, I decided to do something just a little Halloween-y, since Halloween is just a few days away. So I dug through my 45s. The song that I was originally looking for, I thought I actually had, but when I was going through my 45s, I discovered I actually don't. However, in the process of looking for that other song, which I didn't find, I found what I picked out for today instead. And it works just as well. The story begins back in the early to mid 1960s. A guy named Jerry Samuels was working as a recording engineer at Associated Recording Studio there in New York. By this time, he'd already worked there for a couple of years, and he had started experimenting with the equipment there in the studio. Years before this, starting back in 1958, Ross Bagdasarian had been creating the sound for his Alvin and the Chipmunks characters by simply speeding up the vocals. Back then, this test was a simple one to achieve, but it would affect the vocals of the entire song. Samuels, however, having been able to do creative things, figured out a different way to alter the vocals of a song. The difference between the two is that Samuels's way didn't affect the whole song, but just the one section it was working on. Back in the mid 1960s, the method of vocal alteration for songs that he discovered was actually pretty difficult, since all they had back then was analog equipment with recording tape instead of all that digital software that we have now. It was a difficult thing to do and quite time consuming. Back then, mono sound was recorded with just one tape, one track, and everything was all on that one thing together. Stereo sound was made by having a machine that recorded the music onto two separate tracks. You had a left track and a right track. They were then put together to make the entire recording, which was then released to the public. Later in the 60s, a new machine was added to the process. It was called a multi-track machine, and this new machine could record onto four tracks instead of just the two that they were used to. You had two left tracks and you had two right tracks. Now, this would create a slightly better sound quality for stereo music. One of the big labels at the time that used this kind of recording method was London's Phase 4 series. Jerry Samuels had been experimenting with the equipment in the recording studio that he worked at, and he had discovered something. He learned that if you take a device they called a VFO, or a variable frequency oscillator, and you connect it to the motor on the multi-track machine that controls the speed, then you can change the hertz of the sound. The hertz is the sound frequency, or how many times the sound waves vibrate per second. If you take a song and you raise the hertz, it'll sound higher in pitch, kind of like a helium effect, if you've ever sucked the helium out of a balloon. And the opposite is also true. If you take a song and you lower the hertz, it will sound lower in pitch, giving it the illusion of a deeper voice. What Samuels discovered that he could do would only affect the track or voice that it was actually hooked up to, instead of changing the tempo for the entire song like Bagdasarian's Chipmunks. Once he discovered this cool little trick by hooking the VFO up to the motor on the recording machine to affect the pitch individually of the vocals, he got the idea for a new song. One night, while Jerry Samuels was just sitting in his chair, stoned, an old Scottish tune happened to pop into his head. This song is called "The Campbells Are Coming," and it's a traditional Scottish tune from the first half of the 1700s that's about and for one of the most powerful clans throughout Scotland's history, the Campbell clan. And he got to humming this song, and while he was humming it, and he ended up altering some of the lyrics a little bit as he was just going along. Eventually, he had created a new line for the song that he actually kind of liked. When he remembered what he could do with that VFO device, he paired that with this new line that he had just created by just messing around with "The Campbells Are Coming." He had his idea for that new song. Beginning with that one line that he had, he started writing the song. He started with just one verse and the chorus when he stopped. He looked at what he had written and realized what he was creating was a sick joke of a song, and he put it away. Now, 3 months later, he pulled it back out again and wrote another verse to the song. After adding the second verse, he decided that the song was turning into even more of a sicker joke. So once again, he put it away. Eventually, 6 months later, he got his partially written song back out and he decided that he was going to sit down and he was going to finally finish writing that song. He wanted to try and lighten the joke that the song had become by doing something in the last verse that would throw things off a little bit, kind of throw you for a loop right there at the end. If you listen to the song, the lyrics that he wrote make it seem like it's about a guy who goes insane after his girl leaves him. And then he's being taken to the funny farm or psychiatric hospital. The twist towards the end of the song that he wanted to lighten this joke that he had written was that he was actually talking about his dog, not a girl. Since he was doing all of this just in his free time and at night after the studio was closed, because the owner was letting him use the studio at night, he didn't have a professional drummer handy. So instead, he called up a friend of his. This friend could play the drums, sort of, but not very well. When it came time to record the drums, he wanted to do a 7-second drum loop. Now, his friend wasn't very good at the drums, but he was able to do what Samuels wanted for his 7 seconds of playtime. When you listen to the song and you wonder why it happens to sound like it's so perfect as far as the rhythm goes, that's because Samuels took that 7-second drum piece and he looped it for the entire song. He also wanted hand clappers as a main part of that backing music. So he brought in a couple of his friends to the studio at 2 in the morning, and the three of them together recorded the clapping. Originally, he wanted a whole bunch of people to come in, but only two of his friends came in, making 3 people total. Because he wanted more than just 3 people, his original idea was for the 3 guys to sit in a circle with the microphone hanging down between them, and they were to drop their pants, and instead of clapping their hands, they would smack their thighs because their clothes would muffle the sound, but if they slapped skin on skin, not only would he get the multiple hands that he was wanting for clappers, he would get a better sound for the recording. However, his other 2 friends didn't quite agree with that idea, and so instead, he just recorded the 3 of them clapping in the studio like normal, and then he went back and he overdubbed it a couple of times, or going back and recording over another recording to kind of overlap the 2, making it sound like there's actually 9 people clapping in the background of this song. He also overdubbed the siren sound that plays in the background as a sound effect. What he did was he rented a basic hand crank siren for $5. But since he only had the one, he had to be creative. And so he overdubbed it, just like the clapping, to make it sound like there were 6 sirens going all at once instead of just the one. By this time, Samuels had recorded his 3 audio tracks that he wanted. He had the drummer with the 7-second drum loop. He had the clappers, which was 9 people clapping, sort of. And he had his siren sound, being 6 sirens playing in the background. Once again, sort of, He just needed the vocals. So he went and he asked his studio partner to connect that VFO device while he went inside and he recorded the vocals. His partner would play the song that he had created while he turned down that VFO device little by little, seeming to slow down the music quite a bit while Samuels was inside the booth listening to it. He then sang the vocals while listening to this extremely altered sound. During the run toward in the chorus to the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time, he actually ran out of breath after that word time, at which point they had to rewind the tape and then continue recording. However, you wouldn't notice this because they did such a good job at recording it to kind of hide that fact that he ran out of breath and they had to go back a few seconds and start again. Now that he finally had his song finished, he had to release it. However, he didn't want to release it under his own name, but a pseudonym instead. So he chose the alias Napoleon the 14th as an artist name. In July of 1966, under the alias Napoleon the 14th, Jerry Samuels released his new song that he had created using strange and unusual techniques. And They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, was out and it became an instant hit. As popular as this song is, and I'm sure you've all caught yourself singing or humming it at least once, it isn't alone. It has sequels. The song was also released on an album in 1966 titled They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, as well. It's the title track of the album. If you check the track listing on that album, the very last track is called I'm Happy They Took You Away, haha. For this one, a woman named Brenna Rayburn came in and she sung and recorded this song as a response to the other one, keeping up the trend with aliases that Samuels had started. She used Napoleon Bonaparte's wife as her name, and she is credited as Josephine the 15th. Also, another track on this same album was created basically as a variation of They're Coming to Take Me Away. This other song is called The Place Where the Nuts Hunt the Squirrels. At the end of this song, he repeats the line, They're trying to drive me sane, in the same manner as They're Coming to Take Me Away. And later, towards the end of 1966, a second response song was released, but this time by another artist named Josephine. However, this Josephine is a different person than the one on Napoleon's original album, singing the first response song. After this song's release, it appeared on an album called These Are the Hits, You Silly Savage, by a duo called Teddy and Daryl. The second response song, sung by Josephine and then again by Teddy and Daryl, which the Teddy and Daryl one is the one that was heard more, is called They Took You Away, I'm Glad, I'm Glad. But that makes two response songs and a variation, two of which done by the original artist and released with the album it was on, one by someone else. But this song still has more to come out. It's not done getting stuff. Eventually, in 1988, Jerry Samuels wrote and recorded what would be the first official sequel to the original hit. By then, he had two response songs and a variation, but this would be the actual sequel that was created for it. And he released They're Coming to Take Me Away Again, haha, a couple years later in 1990. In the sequel, the narrator is discharged from the hospital that he was put in the first one, but he later gets readmitted because he's still plagued by fear and insanity. That would leave this great song, They're Coming to Take Me Away, with a sequel, two response songs, and a variation of this song about nuts hunting squirrels. But there's one last cool detail about this song that I bet you didn't know, because I didn't until I picked up the 45 and looked at it. If you look at the track listing on the front of the album that the song was released on, and you compare that to the track listing on the back of the album, you'll notice a discrepancy. In the track listing on the front of the album, the last song looks like a bunch of random letters. Plus, this is only on the front of the jacket because it's not technically on the album. When the song came out as a single, the song that they chose for the B side, or the flip side, was a song that they didn't put on the matching album. What they used for the flip side of the single was They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, as well, but in reverse. Not only is the name of the song, as well as most of the other information, actually printed on the label, flipped backwards, kind of like a mirror effect, but if you play the record, the music that plays is the song played in reverse. They backmasked the song. And so the A side, the front side of the single, is a song played normally. You flip it over, it's kind of like flipping the song over, and the song plays backwards. This reversed version of the song has been called, quote, the most obnoxious song to ever appear in a jukebox, by critic Dave Marsh in his book of Rock Lists. Apparently, at one time when someone played this reversed version of the song at a diner, it was able to clear out the entire diner of 40 people in just 2 minutes. But that's all that I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed this special Halloween episode. I picked They're Coming to Take Me Away, haha, by Napoleon the 14th, also known as Jerry Samuels. It was written over the course of 9 months after he discovered a cool little trick with a couple pieces of equipment there in the recording studio he worked in. He brought in friends during the off hours of the studio and used some unorthodox recording methods to record the sound for this song. And after it was released, it went both to the top of the charts and got banned almost at the same time. Was followed up by two response songs, a variation song, and a sequel, as well as the single. The B-side was a song flipped in reverse. It comes out about every year around Halloween time, so I figured it was a good one for today. But if you like this episode, and you like this story, you like this kind of stuff, let me know. Also, like I said earlier, due to a lack of interest that has been shown in this show and these videos, I'm considering ending it. If you have any thoughts on that, or you would like to see this show continue, please let me know about that as well in the comments. Otherwise, do all that fun stuff, like, comment, subscribe. My name is Brandon. This has been Vinyl Tales, where we spin tales about vinyl, and I will see you later.